Hello and welcome to the Under Center podcast. Back again for another week's roundup and preview of NFL action on the NFL show. I'm joined today by Rian and Al. We've left a space for Dara as well. He's waiting for a plumber. Allegedly, he's going to join us. We'll have to wait and see. I've just seen as well we've had a catastrophic error on the Twitter feed. So we're just on YouTube live tonight. So if you do have any comments, let us know there. Guys, welcome in. A lot of big results around the league this weekend. Donald Trump, the only man to win in Florida this weekend. All the Florida teams in every level of American football got their asses whipped today. Rian, your men are on a bit of a streak at the moment, as predicted by me. You must be feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I'm feeling great. I mean, this is the first time in Bryce Young's career that he's gotten back-to-back wins in the NFL. So yeah, it's a pretty good feeling. It's one that I haven't felt in quite a while. So yeah, I'm glad, man.
Yeah, I reckon it's going to be pretty short-lived. I think I remember looking at the schedule. You got four absolute
next.
doozies coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah, Al, the Chiefs coming up for the Panthers. Of course, famously, at this point in time, looks like magically not able to lose because they have tried their best to lose a lot of games this season. And for whatever way they do it, they just never seem to be able to get over the line. They always seem to accidentally win.
Yeah, I think Andy Reid sold his soul. So I think we got a few more years of this before it comes time to pay for that.
Yeah, it doesn't look great. I'm looking for were your Seahawks on a bye week this week?
They were, yeah. Thankfully.
Right, okay. Back to action. Who have they got coming up in week 11?
49ers. So that should be fun.
Yeah. Look, they have a lot of injuries at the moment and they're punching the head off their kicker, which I felt particularly unfair. I think we might start there. It wasn't on our list of things to do, but I have a bit of a gripe with this. Obviously, Jake Moody, I believe his name is Moody for sure is the surname. He's the kicker for the San Francisco 49ers. Missed 3 kicks, I believe, but did make the most important kick, which is the final kick of the game to win it for the San Francisco 49ers. After he missed the 3rd kick, Deebo Samuel came over and tried to knock his head in, basically. Took the long snapper to step in and kind of protect him a little bit. I have to say, I have a serious gripe with this, not least because, okay, the kicker has a lot of pressure. He doesn't have a whole lot of jobs to do on the NFL pitch, but if he's kicking, Deebo, that means you didn't do your job properly because he's only supposed to kick extra points as far as I'm concerned in the NFL. Al, what did you make of the situation? Did you catch it live? Did you have any instant reaction to it?
I didn't see much of this situation, but yeah, I think a lot of the stuff towards Moody, especially like considering he was coming off a fairly big injury, clearly, wasn't 100% coming back into the game. It happens. It takes some players a few games to get back into things. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like the offense choked it a few times. They weren't playing all that well. And to blame Moody, like, yeah, just do your job better. Offensive line better block better. Brock Purdy better play better, and the receivers better catch the balls. Like, if it's coming down to your kicker deciding the game, you didn't play well enough. That's on you. That's on coaching. That's on the rest of the players. Your kicker shouldn't decide games. It too often comes down to that. Like, if like it's just a close game and both, teams are playing well, defense got the better of them, whatever. But the 49ers just, made a bunch of mistakes on offense without, counting Moody in. So I don't know. I think it's harsh. Like, he deserves criticism. He missed kicks that he should be making, but
This is what I'm saying.
You're on bury the kicker bandwagon.
We're sitting here with this pity party for Jake Moody. He missed 3 fucking kicks. If you're not fit, don't go.
No, but my problem is
not to him, though.
But my issue is not with Jake Moody. Yes, he did not hit kicks that he should be hitting, but also the attitude from Deebo Samuel is just fucking horrendous. Even at a junior level, you don't want to be like taking digs at guys on your own sideline. It's just not conducive to a cohesive locker room. So yeah, Deebo was in the wrong, but Jake Moody was in the fucking wrong too. He missed easy kicks.
I'd love to see just the next drop that Debo has. Jake Moody takes his helmet and has a swing at him as he's coming off the pitch. Like, you idiot. Especially if it's for like a punt or something where they're like out of field goal range because of the drop. That's what I'd like to see. But look, Mr. Moody had a bad day at the office. Another team and coach that had a bad day at the office and has had several in a row now is the Chicago Bears. It looked for a minute there like they were getting their shit together. They have been absolutely abysmal since their bye week. They've gone on a long run of drives now without scoring a touchdown, and it's not looking good. It seems like Williams as well is kind of regressing a little bit, or at least not flashing the way he was at the start of the season, despite a difficult, let's say, setup there. And of course, finally, they've moved on from Shane Waldorn. I'm going to start with you. Shane Waldorn had pretty poor reviews before he got to the Bears. He's obviously now gone. The offense has stagnated. But what I would really know is, how lucky should Matt Eberflus count himself in order to not be on the bus out of Chicago alongside his offensive coordinator?
Well, we mentioned this last week with the Raiders situation as well. When coordinators start to go, that's kind of the last line of defense for those head coaches because there is no more excuses now. I feel a little bit sorry for Caleb Williams in all this situation because it seems like we're going down the exact same road that we went down with Mitch Trubisky and we went down with Justin Fields, having two offensive coordinators in the space of a year. Both of those other guys had the same issue and it didn't work out for them. Now, Shane Waldorn did not have glowing he wasn't well respected, particularly by members of our podcast coming into this season. So I'm not sure what the decision-making process was there to bring him in. Did they think he was going to suit Caleb Williams' style of play? I'm not so sure. But, it's going to be tough now for Caleb Williams to react to whoever comes in and steps up and takes on that role, even moving into next season.
Yeah, Al, kind of a double-barrel question for you. Obviously, one, were you surprised Shane Waldron didn't make it to the end of the year? Obviously, you don't have very high opinion of him. And then secondly, I noticed as well, the last two games before this slump, Panthers and then Jaguars in London, over 70 points scored by the offense. And then all of a sudden now, it's been, 12 points over the last two games. No touchdowns, as I said. Yeah, have you seen anything? Have you watched much of them to be able to see where that issue is coming from, where the slump in terms of scoring? Because you can't even argue, yes, the Panthers are down there. Yes, the Jaguars are down there. But so are the Patriots, and they couldn't get anything going against the Patriots. So something has clearly got even worse since the bye week.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things, but Shane Waldorn wasn't helping. I think he is a scapegoat for sure. Eberflus is a pretty poor coach. But yeah, I just think that I think they just need to, tear it down there with the Bears again, because like the players aren't executing, the coaching is bad, and I don't want to say there was no reason to fire Waldron. Like, he's awful. We were saying it. All the last year in Seattle, and then this year we were saying it before the season started, and now we've seen how that's played out with how the offense is playing. They're just bad, and Waldron wasn't helping the situation. It's not helping, especially with the rookie quarterback like that. He's not in the best of situations. He has a Dunze there, but he's still learning. The offensive line is pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, there's not a whole lot going on in that offense. So the play calling compounds all that. It just makes it so much worse when the play calling is shit. If you had play calling that could account for the deficiencies on the offense and to help, the young quarterback deal with those and grow with the offense, that'd be fine. But he just doesn't do that. He just calls a bunch of shit every game. And I can see why he was fired. Definitely a scapegoat, but I don't think it's completely unjustified either.
Yeah, unfortunately on this podcast, we don't have access to the next gen stats. We don't quite have the budget to be able to get into all those kind of stat packages that they have. But it strikes me, and I think it's the easy answer, but so often it is the case that these struggling teams, they add talent where they can in the draft, obviously, and especially if you're one that needs a quarterback, you have to go up and take a quarterback. But quite often it's to the neglect of the offensive line, and I think that stands out significantly against this Patriots, in particular, this match. Not particularly vaunted defense this season, as we said. Not a huge amount of wins for them either. But 9 sacks on the day. They only had 15 coming into the game. That was pretty impressive. You've got Caleb Williams averaging 4 yards a pass. That's usually indicative of trying to get the ball out quick, not having time to go downfield. And then also the run game. They only had DeAndre Swift went for 60 yards, give or take. They had 73 in the game with Caleb Williams and DJ Moore chipping in a couple of yards here and there. So those stats to me scream the offensive line is not up to par, and it's so difficult. I'm one of those people that freely admits the offensive line, both when it's good and when it's bad, is a dark arts to me. I struggle, but when you start to see these traits that get picked up by all these bad teams where they can't run the ball, the wide receivers aren't getting separation, and the quarterback doesn't seem to be accurate. For me, that screams it screams that the offensive line is just not robust enough, not good enough. Any of these quarterbacks, like most of the backups as well, will shred you if the offensive line gives them unlimited time to throw. And so when that starts to break down, every piece of the game crumbles with it. And as much as Shane Waldorn hasn't coached his way out of that problem, you would certainly have to say that the offensive line not firing on all cylinders makes every aspect of the game struggle. And I think that's where the big problem is going to come from. And ultimately, it's how Eberflus is going to have to answer the bell, because he just cannot get his offense to start rolling without making dramatic changes at the offensive line. And Reen, you said in the group chat, he must know something, or he must have something on the Bears ownership, because it really doesn't make sense for him to last this long. I don't know. Maybe he's given a pitch. He knows what he wants to change over the next years, or that his vision that he sold to ownership isn't complete, and that's why he didn't get the marching orders along with Shane Waldorn. But it's getting harder and harder to believe, and you would certainly have to imagine if he does manage to make it to the end of the season, he may not make it much further than the following Monday, because the results haven't looked good and the football hasn't looked good. And his scapegoat is now gone with still, I think, week 11, so there's probably 6 or 7 more games to go. And if things don't start to look up pretty quickly, that can be a big issue. And also, I would say, a lot of times we see these teams that get rid of their coach, they have a little bounce back like the Jets had. And it tends to happen when the head coach is gone and a big, like an interim coach comes in, there's a big sea change. I think when a coordinator goes, there's a much less of that effect. So I think Eberflus is going to be under serious problems. I don't know, guys. I'd probably Al, but maybe Reen, is his background offensive? Is he going to take over play calling now, or is that going to go somewhere else? That'll be quite interesting to see.
It has gone somewhere else, but I can't remember his name. It was one of the assistants.
Well, look,
I think it might have been the pass game coordinator it went to for now. But yeah, I'm not sure where Eberflus's background is.
Yeah, look, I think it's interesting. It's going to be something to keep an eye on, because that team does not look good. You could argue it a lot of teams, but it does not look good, and it hasn't looked good for a while now. And so this big change is going to have to turn over pretty quickly. The next thing we have up on our list is Dak Prescott will no longer be playing for the Dallas Cowboys this season. He's got all the specialists he needed to look at that leg, and they all told him it's fucked. And so he won't be back this season. Ryan, does this make the Cowboys better now that they don't have to play with Dak Prescott under center?
Honestly, no, it doesn't. Dak Prescott is a serviceable quarterback. That display on Sunday was far from serviceable from, I can't even remember his name. Cooper Rush. To the extent that he was benched and taken out of that game. To be honest, I don't see Cooper Rush seeing the field again for the rest of the season now that decision has been made. I think you've got to see what you've got in what's his name?
Lance.
Trey Lance, yeah, because at this point he needs to be starting games. You need to get him some game film on tape, and just see what you have. You know, it's the season is gone as it stands with Dak Prescott out. Offense is struggling. The defensive side of the ball is not really living up to the billing, considering the big names that they have on there. So, yeah, I think at this point you really do need to look to Trey Lance to see what you have. And if that's 8 more losses on the season, so be it. At least now you know. At least now you're in a position to draft most likely Shedeur Sanders pretty early on.
Yeah. I also want to touch on the Cowboys made it into the headlines for another reason after last week's game, the pretty devastating loss to the Eagles. And that is the sun coming in the back arse of Jerry's world. Apparently, they do have curtains. Like, they use these curtains for concerts and stuff. They just don't use them for football games. And, of course, the rule is whatever you set up has to be there. For instance, if it's a roof that can open, you can either have it open or you have it closed. You can't close it in the meantime. And so they can't, like, have the sun come in and then when they don't want it kind of closed over. Makes sense, I know, but I'm just pointing that out for anyone who isn't aware of those rules. So they could, in theory, cover it up pre-game, especially those later games. I wonder if we're hearing about it a lot this year. I wonder if it's because the decay of the Dallas Cowboys and their prestige over the last 3 or 4 years is they're no longer getting as many primetime games in like end of November where the sun is like starting to come in the window and all of a sudden now they have to play at like 2 p.m. kickoff like everybody else and the sun's starting to blind each other. I would love to see, Al, if CeeDee Lamb, just to spite Jerry Jones, comes out and plays the next home game with Pip Vipers on, just to be like, oh, well, at least now I can see. What do you make of this whole drama? I don't know if you've been following it or not.
I didn't see anything about this. That's wild that you can't, like, you just can't do it in the middle of a game.
Yep.
That's so strange. I'd be almost certain a couple of weeks ago in the Cardinals game that they closed the roof mid-game because it was raining.
It may be that the NFL has unilateral decision to make that decision, but if you think about it, it wouldn't make sense, like, especially if you can get a quick opening roof. So like when they're kicking, you open it up, the wind goes crazy, and when you're kicking, you close it. Or even easier, the Jerry Jones, when you're playing into the sun, you close the window, and when you're playing up with your son to your back, you open it.
No, like obviously, like stuff like that. That's obvious. Like, don't do that. But it's weird. Like if it's either way, if the sun's getting players' eyes or if it's raining, just close them, and then that's it for the game. Like you're not allowed to do it again or whatever. But that's mad. I've never heard that. That's such a weird rule to have, that you wouldn't be able to close the blinds and just, can't do it. Blind your players. Too bad. Should have done it before the game.
Yeah, our man here on the YouTube, Dara, by the way, I don't know if you have control of this, but if you could change the Twitter, we're trying to broadcast off your Twitter, not our Twitter. It's not letting us go. It's the whole thing. It was chaos. But yeah, we know it is on the side of the stadium. It's a wall. And they do have, it's not tech, it's literally a like cloth covering, but they do have made to measure coverings that can be put up over the window and are put up over the window for concerts and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see now if they make any adjustment. Jerry, in classic fashion, he answered spikily, but I don't know how much of it was sarcastic. He said, oh, you know what, let's just pull the whole thing down, we'll build a new one. I mean, not the most sarcastic answer, but that doesn't necessarily imply that he's not willing to make a change. I think especially if it's a chance to win some games. Rian, I also saw Micah Parsons was dragged through because he mentioned, given the slump the Cowboys have gone through, a reporter mentioned to him as they were in the dressing room, how do you feel about all this? And he mentioned a couple of older statesmen there in the Cowboys saying, look, it's a pity. These guys have put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and we want to win it. And I believe he was picked up on the fact that he did not mention the head coach, Mike McCarthy. Now, He's since said like he's going to come out on his podcast and set the record straight. Or like, again, these guys don't necessarily need any extra media or attention. But I thought it was quite interesting because I'm not sure, like, I kind of see where he's coming from. I'm not sure why Mike McCarthy would need to be mentioned. He's only been there a couple of years, and there's some long-standing Cowboys players that have been there a lot longer than he has.
Well, I mean, even if you look at it, it's like he's upset that these guys might not get the chance to win a Super Bowl. Guess what? Mike McCarthy has had the chance to win a Super Bowl and has won a Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
Why? Like, maybe that's all the explanation you need in this sense, is that he's upset about the guys who are not going to win a Super Bowl with the Cowboys, because the Cowboys haven't been in a Super Bowl since, 1996 or something like that? It's a strange one to be pulling up a guy on that, and it's such a throwaway comment, but hey, that's the media these days.
Yeah, look, I think I'm along with you. I think it's just people trying to get a bit of clickbait going, bit of controversy going, and I think a lot of the media, as much as they're still an NFL darling team, the Dallas Cowboys, despite the protestation, the most fans, I think it'd be fair to say that the media still holds them in pretty high regard. But I think there is an element of the media now that is enjoying kicking them while they're down, and now that it seems fairly solid now after a good few years that they are not on the rise anymore, they are finally falling. I think a lot of people are piling in. Al, are you any thoughts on this one? Would you like to see more controversial comments by media personalities such as ourselves to rile up the players?
Oh yeah. More drama, the better. I don't know. I think, it started off the year paying Dak and CD just ridiculous sums of money when they had such glaring holes. They could have spent that money elsewhere. I don't say this, anything on Dak or CD. Like, good for them. They got their money. But that was a decision that they made to spend all their money on two players, and they obviously had huge holes elsewhere, especially on the defensive line. Like, Micah Parsons can't do everything, and that shows. The Eagles nearly ran for 200 yards, I think. I don't know. It's fascinating watching Jerry Jones and the Cowboys try and navigate this year, because I think they're still convinced that they can play well and win games when without Dak. That's just not possible. Even though he's not, the most amazing quarterback, with Dak gone, that team's dead. Fire everyone.
I think it's interesting as well. Look, there's always comments, and the media is always trying to get in comments, and there's been a discussion as well about access to the dressing room. I'm not 100% sure if he made those comments in the dressing room or not, but dressing room access has started to be floated with the NFL Players Association. They got a taste of it in COVID, having the media away from the locker room. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think there should be a media area. We see it in most other sports, that at least there's a controlled environment away from the player's personal space, which ultimately the locker is. They're coming in from the game and they're just trying to get changed. And yes, the media, it's very interesting to get their immediate reaction, but I think it has to be a little bit more controlled than where it is. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But the reason I wanted to bring it up is I did see other comments from another wide receiver, Jamar Chase, after the Bengals-Ravens game. And I don't necessarily bring it up because of what he said was controversial. Actually, it wasn't particularly controversial, but I bring it up as a kind of an interesting dynamic that's been happening this season. The Bengals had a woeful start. They've started to play a lot better football. Actually, you could argue they haven't been playing better football in terms of Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow since the pair joined the Bengals. And yet they're not seeing the win column tick up quite as much as they want. They lost a barn burner to the Ravens there on the weekend. Rian, did you watch the game? What were your thoughts, and what are your thoughts on the Bengals' performance so far this season? One of the more interesting teams in the NFL at the moment that still haven't quite found themselves.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assessment of the situation out there. I'm not keen on big egos from wide receivers, and I think Jamar Chase has shown that again with his always open comments and not going to him on the 2-point conversion play, yada yada yada. Look, they're in a position at the moment where they have actually brought on some very decent talent, particularly in this year's draft, and actually at the end of last year as well. I like Yoshi Vass as a receiver. I like that new tight end that they have. Is it Ball? I'm not sure what his name is anyway, but they drafted him this year. He seems to be pretty good. So yeah, look, they're in a position where they can move forward, and with them being blessed, being in the division that they're in, they're not hugely out of the running just yet. Joe Burrow said, a 10-win team gets in, we can still get 10 wins. And I wouldn't be disagreeing with that, to be honest. They could still go on a bit of a streak. They have that kind of caliber in them. So yeah, I think it's not time to hit the panic button just yet with the Bengals. If this is an off season, so be it. But yeah, I think they're set up for the future.
Yeah, they have a lot of time. Our video viewers will have noticed the fourth head pop in on top of us. Just introducing you to the audio listeners, Dara. Welcome aboard. Hope you had a nice week watching the NFL action. We're chatting at the moment about the Bengals and Ravens game. We haven't moved on to the Ravens, although I do want to ask about them. How have you found the Bengals this season? As Rian mentioned, still kind of trying to find themselves, even though you could argue Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow in particular are playing outstandingly well this season, maybe the best they've played for the Bengals so far. What do they need to do to get a few more wins in the win column, or is it just a matter of the schedule is going to fall where it falls and it might provide a couple of extra wins in the win column for them?
Luck is something that I subscribe to in the NFL, and the Bengals have been extremely unlucky, I feel. And I think that I just have a quick look here at their schedule and seeing where it gets easier. And, their next games include ones against, teams with winning records that include the Chargers, the Steelers. I'm sorry, the Steelers twice. And then that's it. You've got the Cowboys, the Titans, the Browns, and the Broncos. So the Broncos, I believe, are either
They're
exactly
5-5 at the moment.
5-5. So yeah, they're 500. So you have sort of played the, guess you could say, in the hindsight side of it, harder end of your schedule so far. So you should be able now to come in to these next few games, get a few wins under the belt. Not as bad as they played, because at the start of the season they played badly, but they've come into it, and it kind of shows now how much you need to have it as good as a quarterback and a wide receiver duo as Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow are. You just need a defense and you need a line, and they don't have that. I know Trey Hendrickson is a good pass rusher, but they can't stop the run to save their lives at the moment. And that is a really big issue. Their backfield is getting torched as well. If you look at in terms of, points, even in the last 3 games alone, okay, against the Eagles, the Raiders, the Ravens, they've conceded over 20 points in each of those games. Even against the Raiders with Gardner Minshew, they conceded 24 points. Now, the argument is, I think at least 7, maybe 10 was garbage time, so you maybe can discount them a little bit for that. But they're still scoring points on that team. And, we're gone past the trade deadline now. I don't believe they traded for anyone on the defense. I know they got Khalil Herbert on the trade deadline. They didn't. I don't think they got any defensive linemen or any sort of defensive help. So they're kind of stuck with what they've got. And they still have a wild card chance, surprisingly. But I just don't see them making it. And I think at this point, your teams are really starting to make that decision where, is this a down year, or can we realistically make the playoffs? I think the NFC side, strangely enough, for the lack of talent, is a lot tougher to get a wildcard spot this year than it is in the AFC. So the Bengals still have a chance of 4-6 because they're in the AFC. If we were looking at an NFC side that are 4-6, you would probably rule them out. So, yeah, I think at this stage, if you're a Bengals fan, you just want to finish the season well. You want to take this momentum into next year, hopefully get a good draft, get some stuff on. I don't know if you had this conversation, lads, before I came on air, but would you be keeping Zach Taylor regardless of how the season finishes now at this stage, or would you be looking at making a change, considering that it looks like unless Jamar Chase changes his mindset, he's gone?
I would be surprised if Jamar Chase is gone. I am in favor of keeping Taylor on for another season. I think he's done some good stuff. I think it's easy to forget where the Bengals were before he took over and Joe Burrow got in, and then with the injuries as well. It hasn't been a consistent run of having prime Joe Burrow, and I think that does affect the stat lines more than the eyeball test. I think they've been playing some really good football. They have a good running game. They need to keep that going. I think Jamar Chase, if he does leave, would be a huge loss. Now, whether that deserves then the coach to also be fired, i.e. you couldn't keep the star man, I think that's a little bit harsh, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him keep going. I think he's been doing a good job. I think there's certainly worse head coaches out there at the moment.
I wouldn't say he would lose his job because Jamar Chase walks. I put that on ownership and GM before I put it on head coach. But the way the team has played this year and the fact that they haven't been able to, build off their Super Bowl appearance a couple of years ago, it seems to be steadily going downhill since then.
Well, that's kind of my point, right, that I was trying to make is there was a height and then it's felt like it fell off, but then also you had a pretty significant Joe Burrow injury. And as I've seen painfully up close with the Commanders, like NFL teams are just not designed to operate with backup quarterbacks. And so when that happens, yes, there's a huge slump and it can take a lot of momentum out of a franchise, which ultimately the head coach is responsible for. But I'd love to see him get even a couple more years, especially if Jamar Chase does move on, because that's also a pretty significant piece of a puzzle to remove out of that equation. And any head coach is going to suffer a little bit. I don't think it's indicative of his performance as a head coach, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does make sense. You've convinced me. I'm going to give him another year.
Well, Rian or Al, I wanted to ask you as well about the Ravens on the other side of that matchup that we saw. They have also started cold, I would have argued, at least for the first maybe month of the season. They've really heated up. We're coming into week 11. Is Lamar Jackson your leader for MVP at the moment, or have you got your eye on somebody else? Maybe Derrick Henry?
I don't know, to be honest. There's a bunch of names in there. I don't know if he'd be a leader. He's playing excellently. He's one of the main reasons for their success, as always. As much as many people will try and put him down and just say he's a running quarterback and they'll figure him out eventually. They haven't and they won't, because he does both things very well. Of course, he runs. He's real shifty. He's very good at that. He's also really good pocket passer, and a lot of people just don't talk about that. He makes some crazy throws, and you hear them talking about so many other quarterbacks when they make throws like that, but Lamar never gets his flowers for being as good a passer as he is. But I don't know. MVP, I mean, yeah, he's definitely in the conversation given who he's throwing to. Not nobody's, but I wouldn't say there's a single number one sure thing wide receiver on that team. So
who'd you put ahead of him?
I don't know. That's the thing. It's hard to say who you'd put ahead of him this year. I don't know.
I'd love to put Saquon there, but I just know at this point it's just not. It's just an
it's a
QB
most
award at this point. Yeah. So I don't know. Like I said, Joe Burrow has been playing actually exceptionally well for this poor Bengals team or underperforming Bengals
you
team.
can't give a QB below 500
I
MVP
don't.
though.
I don't think so. Sam Darnold, but he's looked a lot more dodgy now over the last 2 weeks.
Gone
You
a
would
bit
have said
rubbish,
Four
and
interceptions.
he may have
Interceptions
lost.
last week.
He may have lost Aaron Jones as well. He had a pretty nasty looking injury in that game at the weekend.
yeah.
So without a running back, Sam Darnold gets ropey. He does get ropey.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
Jared
I would've
Goff is
had
playing
Jared
the
Goff.
most vanilla yet spicy football of his life at the moment.
Jared
That's
Goff had 5
the thing-
interceptions this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you
think
can't
before-
just take one game and say that's why he
Before
can't win
last
MVP.
weekend,
They've
I
all
would have
had
said
one
Jared
game.
Goff.
It's
The
Patrick
thing-
Mahomes all
Two-
day. The
two
league
games
darling
before
playing
He had
shit,
a
but it doesn't
100%
matter.
completion rate on like 19 passes.
The thing with Jared Goff is they're not leaning on him
Yeah,
because they don't have to. The second you start leaning on Jared Goff is when you get Jared Goof and it all falls apart.
they're a heck
It-
of a lot of fun to watch, though, aren't they? They're really playing good football at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
Last week excluded Rain. I apologize when you threw 5.
No, but
Just
like
caveat that.
that's the thing. We've seen him, 20, maybe 25 throws a game. You're not going to see Jared Goff thrown, 40 times and not, be struggling. Because that's not who he is. He's not,
There's that narrative again, though. You're not going to see Lamar Jackson throw the ball 40 times a game either.
Yeah.
No, but
he's in MVP
it's
contention,
it's
and
not
Jared
necessarily
Goff
a
are
bad
like,
thing. It's not necessarily supposed to be a bad thing. There's not many quarterbacks that can throw 40 times a game and just be awesome at it. You have to lean on other parts of the game, and that's fine. Jared Goff is playing some of the best football, of his career. Not last week. But he's playing excellently, and they don't have to lean on him, and it all just works together very well. But the second you start depending on Jared Goff, I don't know if it's a mental thing for him or what. He just falls apart. The second the game is on his shoulders, not all the time, but most of the time. We've seen it in LA. We've seen it with the Lions. He just falls apart. And that's fine. A lot of quarterbacks would in the same situation when the running game's not working, when he's under a ton of pressure, when the receivers can't catch, when you're trying to play from behind. It's a lot of pressure. It's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just who he is.
Yeah.
I think the Chicago
Josh
Bears
Allen.
punter should be in the conversation.
Who?
Say again, Ree, sorry.
Chicago Bears punter. He's got more yards than Caleb Williams this year.
Tons of work.
Yeah, the guy who came in and
Well,
didn't have to do anything.
He's not going to have to do much. Is not really.
Josh Allen has been
working
playing
out.
excellently as well. To be fair, he certainly has been playing.
One name that no one has said, but Josh Allen.
You
Yeah,
literally
he's
just
been-
said it.
Little bit.
Yeah.
Sorry, but did you hear the name that nobody has said but Ryan? Josh Allen.
Yeah, that's a good point there.
What about talk about guys who can do multiple things? What about Bo Nix,
I mean-
star wide receiver and quarterback, just mossing defenders when he's out on the Philly special?
Actually, I know who it is now. It's Russell Wilson.
It's
3-0
not
Russell Wilson. Beating the Commanders last week.
He didn't
He's
look
playing
great
really
doing it.
well.
With a couple of, he threw 2 picks though, didn't he?
He threw 1 pick officially, but I think there was another one in there that got called back or something. And the first half, both teams struggled. I didn't get to watch the game, unfortunately, because NFL, the zone is like 4 million quid, and then Sky is another 2 million quid. And the Commanders are ironically playing well enough this season that Sky actually wants to show their games in that early slot. So I tend to miss a lot of the Washington games, but I follow it on the app, and both teams struggled in the first half. A lot of punts, a lot of 3 and outs of the first one. But look, they got the job done. A first chink in the armor. I think it suggests that, look, I would argue both of these teams may appear on a fraud watch before the end of the season. I'll actually have to get one of my more significant fraud watches out now. Now is the time to call a fraud, right? Where you kind of got a few games left for an almighty collapse, but enough games to know who's well above where they should be. So maybe have a look, keep your eye out for that on social media. But yeah, my real answer is go back to Lamar Jackson. He's 24 touchdowns, 2 interceptions all season. Like, they're freaky numbers. He's great to watch. That's the other thing I was going to say actually about Jared Goff is it's so hard, like as perfectly as he's playing the quarterback position, it's so hard to give him dues because it's just not as exciting as watching Lamar Jackson do it. And yeah, he has fumbles every other week, and he's not throwing interceptions this year, but he's had them in the past. You know what I mean? He looks a bit raggedy, but at the same time, that raggedness is always liable to turn into something a bit special. Baker Mayfield's one-arm bench pressing Bosa. That's got to be MVP worthy, you know?
Oh God, yeah. I didn't know they had like a history as well. Like they don't like each other from college.
I didn't, but I heard somewhere allegedly that Bosa had to behave because he's only allowed to be rough with the non-white quarterbacks, and he has to behave himself for the white quarterbacks. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
There was a lot of stuff.
Trump's America.
There was a lot of stuff.
He seemed in a very good mood this weekend. I don't know why. Maybe something.
Baker or Bosa with his hat.
All of a sudden he's
that.
ready. All of a sudden he's ready to talk about Trump winning after the election. But when he wore the hat, it's an important time for all of us. But I'm not going to talk about it.
I think he was just trying to avoid getting fined a bajillion dollars. To be honest with you,
he still got fined for the hat.
He did, yeah. But can you imagine if he stood up and did a whole political speech? They would have roasted his ass.
Yeah. Can we just keep it out of football? Like, I don't. Like, it's already bad enough having to see it all the time. I don't need to see it when it comes to football.
Are we seeing? Dara, just to move us on, the final item we have on the agenda. Are we seeing? Oh, actually, sorry, no. We're going to talk about first Sean McVay. And Dara, you reckon he's going to retire at the end of the season? Explain your logic there.
No, not retire. I don't think he's going to be the Rams head coach next year.
When is his contract? Do we know how long his contract is there for?
Let me just check here. I have it here.
Usually,
I did notice
our contract coach man.
I did notice one thing when I did put the text in that I did spell McVay wrong. I used the spelling of a certain Irish running back that I was then told. I was then text straight afterwards because Alex Sims, thank you very much, sent it to him, and then he texted me back saying, "What are you talking about me retiring for?" 2026 is the end of the 2026 season is his last year on the current contract, but. Yeah, I think this season is the last season of Sean McVay and the Rams because these rumors of the team blowing up before the trade deadline, the aging of Matt Stafford, the team, you come into every season and the team is, you look at it and you're like, this team should not be winning as many games as it is. And Al, you made a good point in the group chat that he is coaching up these players extremely, extremely well. But, the bill comes due for that Super Bowl soon. And I just don't think the prospect of a rebuild was done, I think, just after the Super Bowl or the season after the Super Bowl. And Sean McVay was toying with the idea of quitting because of that, because he didn't want it. He's now gotten married. He's now just had a new child. By the way, congratulations to him on that. He was offered stupid money to be, was it Fox? Offered him stupid money to be a Fox analyst, or was it CBS? One of the channels anyway. And he turned it down because he wanted to go again. He's done a few more years. I think he's going to say, right, I can come home every evening to my baby, to see grow up, to my wife. I have to work 3 days a week with Fox or whoever it is, and then I get to go home for the rest of the week. I get to take a break for a while the child, until like my child becomes a certain age, but then I can get back into head coaching on a project that I really feel passionate about again. I don't know. I think he almost did it before, and that's why I'm thinking that he's going to actually go through with it maybe at the end of this season, especially if the Rams don't make the playoffs. He might even still do it if they do.
Yeah, look, I see the logic. Like you said, it's a good point that he had already toyed with the idea from a couple of seasons ago. And I think, in fairness, for me, if it is something that's driving him away, it's certainly that bill that's due. And it's not necessarily the bill itself. It's more just the fun, like the effort of having to cobble together a squad that he knows is subpar for a couple of seasons just to build a bank back up. I just don't think he's going to enjoy that. He really got a lot of fun, it seemed like, out of getting to that Super Bowl. In that sense, his job is done. He paid the Rams back for the faith and the budget that they gave him to put that together. And I think, look, also, he's like, leave that mess for somebody else to clean up. I think it would be quite interesting if he did leave, who would be favored to take it over. I don't know about you guys, Rian, maybe you know, but to me, the head coaching landscape doesn't look particularly hot at the moment. There's not, from maybe 5 years ago, there's not so many names floating around at offensive coordinator that are, at least by media standards or from where I hear my information, that are ready for the step up or that people are suggesting are imminently about to take over a head coaching position. Is there anyone on your radar at the moment that you think might be in with a sniff of a head coaching job?
No, but this happens every year, that there's nobody available until such a time as the next guy is the next hot shit. You know, every single season, someone is interviewing for a head coach job who you've never fucking heard of, but apparently he's the next big thing in the offensive side of the ball. I don't have my eye on anybody, to be honest. Maybe, God, what's the offensive coordinator out in Philadelphia? His name?
Kellen Moore.
Kellen Moore. I could see him maybe as a head coach at some point. Maybe not this cycle, maybe next cycle. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to start worrying about that until the end of the season. In terms of McVay, whether he's going to leave and become a broadcaster, I don't know. I think he likes the sport a bit too much for that sort of thing. So I could see him probably finishing out his contract and maybe picking something up somewhere else, but it would have to be the right project, and they would have to be in a position where they could compete pretty quickly, because I don't think he wants to go through the process of taking on like a Panthers or a Giants or something like that. So yeah, it's I could see him sticking around.
Let me throw this at you.
Oh,
sorry, just very quickly. Let me throw this prospect at you. He does retire. He leaves this year, right? Potential replacement, you know, is there DC Chris Shula, grandson of Don Shula, might be one. But he leaves. Andy Reid does a couple of more years in Kansas City. Job opens up. You have Patrick Mahomes as your QB and probably win a couple of more Super Bowls than in Kansas City.
I think Andy Reid's going to take over Miami, maybe Jacksonville. Just retire there. He's already an old guy.
Probably a big Republican as well.
Probably
He's got that vibe.
Got that Trump air to him.
Okay, at the point of going retire this season or do whatever he has to do this season and then come back in a couple of years to coach the Chiefs, would the Chiefs give up the draft capital to get him in? Because he'll still have a year left on his contract at the end of this season. So that means at any point, if he comes back, he will need to be traded for. And I think that the owner out there in Kansas City is a stingy bastard. I don't think he's going to pay the ransom to get him
Especially the Rams are trying to get a lot of first-round picks back for everything they sent. So they're going to be like, that'll be 12 first-round picks, please. That's a good way to balance the books. Oh, just before we move on, we've got one last item to talk about, actually, fittingly, about the Kansas City Chiefs. But, Al, I think you'll enjoy this. The reason I mentioned earlier on about there's nobody really in like offensive, defensive coordinator positions at the moment being talked about for a possibility of going head coach due to their performance. Did you know Mike Tomlin, for all his years as head coach of the Steelers, has zero coaching tree? Like, he does not have a single coordinator that worked for him that became a head coach anywhere else. I think he's been a head coach for 12 seasons. I believe he hasn't even got somebody else from his offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator to somebody else's. Like, he hasn't even got them the same job somewhere else. He kills careers, which I thought was very, very interesting. I'm not surprised you heard that before, but I wanted to share that, especially when I saw on my feed as well that was it one of the Shanahan, the Shanahan dad that used to be the Commanders head coach. He is like 6 current head coaches that just from his 2013 staff alone. So I thought that was quite interesting that Tomlin has a bit of a shaky history when it comes to his actual coaching level. Anyway, we nearly had a perfect segue, Dara, into our final point of this evening, which is who did the Kansas City Chiefs sell their soul to avoid losing these games? We spoke at the top of the show. It really feels like they're trying very hard to lose them and just can't do it. But somehow they always accidentally win. Do you know who they're talking to, and can we do it to make this show the global star that we know that it is?
I think they're just, human sacrifice. Has to be.
It's
where
the Taylor Swift effect, right? It's got to be. Like, it's just the NFL cannot afford to have her look sad on the sideline. So they're just going to go like undefeated, another Super Bowl.
I think it's a mix of things. There's a lot of luck for sure. I don't know how they keep getting so lucky, but I think they're just
blocked field goal. Nobody blocks a field goal,
and they 34-yarder as well, right? So it's not even like one where he has to.
Yeah. I think as well, like they're lacking on talent in a lot of areas. But even though they're lacking on talent, they are a very well coached team. So that makes up for a lot. Like even if you're lacking on talent, being well coached can win you a lot of games just through bullshit. Just one play near the end of the game, can win you from, just a player paying attention, doing his job, and making sure everything goes right. Yeah. I don't agree with the Chiefs paid the refs. Fucking refs are just shit. Refs have no idea what they're doing. They're fucking up all games this year. Like every game, there's at least 3 calls where you're like what? Why would you call that?
We say like this every season. I'm not sure the refs are shit. I don't think that's the level that refs. Like every year, we're like, this is the worst it's ever been. You're like,
but I'm pretty sure they're not even fully professional, right? I think they have day jobs, these dudes, which is fucking insane for an organization where whatever amount of billions of dollars the NFL is, they do not have full-time referees.
It should be a 7-figure job in the US for sure. When you look at what the other guys in that league are being paid, it should be a 7-figure job for sure.
Well, going back to the Chiefs, Dara said he subscribes to luck a lot in the NFL. You can count 4 different occasions at least where games have been won by the Chiefs based on one single play. You had in the opener of the game, you had the opening game, Isaiah Likely with a millimeter of a toe out of bounds. You had the Falcons with the PI call that wasn't. You had the Bengals with the PI call that was. And now you have the Broncos with a missed field goal. If the result is different on any of those 4 plays, you're now talking about a 5-4 Kansas City Chiefs, but you're not. You're talking about a 9-0 Kansas City Chiefs. So I wonder how they're going to fare in the playoffs when things start to bow up a little bit. We saw that with the Vikings a couple of years ago. They were winning a lot in one-score games, and everybody was like, how does this keep happening? I can see that happening to the Chiefs this season, to be honest. When the going gets tough in the playoffs, I can see that happening.
Yeah.
Look, I think an underrated issue that they've had, because Mahomes has not had a great season, is they haven't really had a guy at running back. This because Pacheco has been injured, and actually I just saw there that he is scheduled to come off IR soon, so he could be back. But they haven't had that hard running sort of running back. They've had Samaje Perine, who's known as a third down back, like a blocking running back. Who's that other guy? Was it Carson Steele? Was a fullback. Was a running back for a while. They haven't really had anyone there in the backfield that takes that pressure off Mahomes and makes them respect the running game, which opens obviously up the backfield for Mahomes and stuff. And look, we all know how football works in that sense, but you know what I mean in terms of having that true running back that defenses are fearing.
Yeah. Look, I think also my one point I'd like to add just before we're gonna wrap up now, but I wonder also, are we seeing a Kelsey swan song here? This might be his last season. I don't know. It might be cruel. He might be getting more involved as a tight end, an inline tight end. I think that's fair to say. But anytime you see a man with his stats over the career that he's had take such a dip, I think it raises some eyebrows. So I'll be interested to see. He certainly looks like he's enjoying his role still. And he might be transitioning more towards a Kittle style where he's not an absolute focal point to the offense and more a key pivot point of the offense. But we'll keep that going as much as we can. I'm sure the NFL would love to have him keep going for as long as he possibly could with the Taylor Swift money that's rolling in. But anyway, that's where we're going to end the show. We've got a Week 11 action to look forward to in the NFL this week. Do please comment, like, and subscribe to us here on YouTube if you're watching us live or if you're watching this back. You can also find the audio versions of this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Join the conversation with us on Instagram at UnderCenterPod, on X at UnderCenterPod as well. And please do get involved. We love to hear your comments. Like, subscribe, follow, all those good things. We try and get as much of a conversation going as possible. We love talking NFL and we love talking to you guys as well whenever we get the chance to do that. So guys, thank you very much for joining me today. We will wrap up the NFL show for this week here. We'll see everybody back next week as we look at all the NFL headlines, news, and results. Guys, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
We'll see you
Thank
and
you.
goodbye.